Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Openly Aging with Allison. And I am Allison O'Shea. I'm the founder of Openly Aging. After more than 20 years working with individuals and families in senior living, I've learned that the most confident aging journeys are the ones where people understand their options way before a crisis happens and not in the middle of one. So that's why every month I have these conversations with professionals who I trust to make sure that we are aware of what options are out there, how best to use services, not because we're declining, but to use them in a way to stay independent. So I'm so excited. Today I am joined by Michael McGregor. He's a doctor of physical therapy. He brings more than 25 years of experience helping people improve their mobility, balance, and overall quality of life. So, Michael earned his doctorate in physical therapy from Marymount University and is a certified exercise expert for older adults, as well as a certified health coach through the National Society of Health Coaches for licensed healthcare professionals. Michael has spent his career in post acute care, is an active member of the American Physical Therapy Association, and is deeply committed to lifelong learning, professional excellence, and ethical practice. So I'm so excited to have him here because today's topic is all about mobility. And if you're not new here to Openly Aging, you will remember that I say quite often, though, that mobility is one of your biggest assets. But in order to protect our mobility, we need to understand what we should be looking for, how to best get services in a proactive way and not reactive. So, Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate you being here. And I'm going to start with a big question and then we'll move through. But what do you hope from your experience of working with older adults through physical therapy that our audience may take away from our conversation today? What would be something that you hope to relay to them?
I think the main point is just kind of understanding that we don't lose things just because we age. It's very important to continue to do the things that are meaningful in our lives and provide value and provide joy, and to continue to kind of work on your fitness and your nutrition and your mobility in order to continue to meet those things that you love to do. I think as we see our patients get older and as we get older ourselves, we begin to accept some of these myths of aging. And especially nowadays, I mean, there's so much out there from an opportunity perspective in terms of different healthcare practitioners, including my own discipline, physical therapist, that can really help people stay as independent and as mobile through whatever age they want to maintain that.
Wonderful. I love that. Well, tell us a little bit about how did you get into physical therapy? What is your origin story, if you will?
So I'm probably the stereotypical male physical therapist. As I was younger and in watched sports, I wanted to be a physical therapist for a sports team or a college. And when I graduated with my master's initially from Rutgers in New Jersey, I looked out for those opportunities, but they were not there. So I actually interviewed for a rehab provider that worked with older adults, and I fell in love with it. So I've been working with older adults in, we call it post-acute, but people that live at home, people that live in retirement communities, whether that's independent, assisted living, memory support, or skilled nursing. That has been my love and my passion for 25 years.
Awesome. So, what are some of when we talk about being proactive in our mobility and making sure that we are aware of the small things? Can you give us some examples of maybe some small declines or I don't like the word decline, small areas where people maybe don't realize, oh, wow, that should be something we pay attention to as we get older?
Yeah, so there's some little ones as we, continue to stay independent and we're still out there engaging in the community. The easiest one is using your arms to stand up from a chair. So that would be a very simple kind of thing to consider. Why am I not having, the lower extremity strength to get up from a chair without using my arms. And sometimes we start that based on maybe we hurt our hip or maybe we hurt our knee, and we're just kind of supporting ourselves in that, rehab or that healing phase. But then we continue to do it.
Mm.
Or maybe we're not as active as we once were, due to many different circumstances. Not, there's not 100% truth to kind of use it or lose it kind of thing, but that is one of those things. If you continue to use your arms to sit up from a chair, you will not put that strength into your lower extremity or into your legs to be able to stay independent with that, what we call a functional task. So that would be the easiest one that I would look at if I'm working with my parents or I'm working with my patients. That would be something that I would look at or observe or assess when I'm around them. Another one would be the speed that we walk around.
Mm.
So what we call it in PT world is kind of walking speed or gait speed. We consider that the sixth vital sign. So as we get older, for older adults, is their walking speed begins to decline. And there's a lot of evidence out there that that's not great for us. And there's a higher risk for hospitalization. There's a higher risk for falls, as an example. So those would be two easy ones. But even just going up steps, and now you're using the railing to get up and down the steps. And again, anything that's sort of different than what you did when you were younger, I would just kind of self-reflect and say, is that due to something, or is that due to me not being as active as I once was? Am I not as strong as I once was? And maybe have some of those questions, either with your local physical therapist or with your physician when you go in there, hopefully for an annual evaluation.
Great. And we hear quite often, everyone's goal is to stay home, as they age. What are
Yeah.
some areas in people's home from a physical therapy perspective that maybe we could just shine some light on, just to be aware of or to be thoughtful of as we kind of look around our home and think about aging there? Are there specific, I know we talk about stairs, but is there
Mhm.
anything else you can think of that can help somebody be proactive with making sure that they're successful at home from a physical therapy standpoint?
Yeah, so the biggest one would be the access to the master bedroom.
Hmm.
So access to a shower and bath on the first floor. If again, depending on your resources, depending on your situation. But if you lose your strength, if you have some sort of illness or injury and you can't get upstairs consistently, then that's going to put pressure if you're not able to adapt or modify your first floor, as an example. Same thing when you look at basic things like your kitchen. What is accessible? What's not accessible? If you have, a low back injury or you have this chronic low back pain, you're not going to want to have the things that you're grabbing on a daily basis to be super low in your kitchen. You're going to want to have things that you can reach, have easy access to. So that would be my biggest thing if I'm, talking to a patient, is as you kind of go through your daily routine, what's easy, what's not easy, what can you adapt, what can you compensate for, just because you have to make choices throughout the day, and you want to prevent and minimize any aggravation to an injury, or make things a little bit more difficult for you.
And would you say, like, if you're starting to avoid doing stairs, would that be another area just to be kind of aware of, like, oh, wow, like I'm avoiding stairs. Why am I? Is it pain? Is it I feel unsteady? Because I see that quite often is people will, oh, I want to age at home. Well, all of a sudden they're home, they're only accessing a small amount because they're like, I don't feel comfortable going upstairs or, um, I would say that would also be kind of a red flag to maybe talk with a physical therapist about how to, you know, feel still comfortable in those areas of your home.
Yeah, again, I would say anything that you're doing today that you're not doing today that you were
Yeah.
doing yesterday
Yeah.
is an opportunity to say why, right?
Hmm.
Some things that we tend to accept as we get older is that pain is kind of part of that normal process. Pain is not a normal thing. So if you do have some pain, whether you know the origin of that pain or not, it's definitely worth asking the question. Sometimes pain is due to, again, not being as mobile, not being as active, not having as much flexibility. Maybe your body tends to compensate for any sort of impairment that you have. So, as an example, if you have some balance issues, you feel unsteady when you walk, it's very normal and instinctive for us to then widen our feet and make that
Mhm.
base of support a little bit wider so we feel a little bit more steady,
Mhm.
right? That again is a red flag to yourself saying, now all of a sudden I'm having a wide
Mhm.
base of support, or I'm not taking as big of a steps as I normally have taken, or maybe I'm taking my cane more than I used to take my cane for. Or maybe I'm getting out of breath or not than what you want to be or what you've experienced. Unless you have a 100% real reason from a physician or a physical therapist that this is what your new normal is, you should be asking questions, seeking help, and seeking resources.
I love that. Yeah, and I love that you brought up because I was going to bring that up is I have found that people just accept pain. It's kind of what you said at the beginning. People just accept decline with age, and we have to really change that mindset. Like, no, 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 like change. Yes, of course, as we get older, things change, but it should be an opportunity to bring in support, bring in, support from physical therapy and not just accept it as, oh, this is my new normal. And pain is for
Yeah, and
sure.
another example of why PTs can be very helpful. So, when I go to the gym, as an example, again, I'm a physical therapist. We take that out of the equation.
Yeah.
If I don't have anything going on from a medical diagnosis perspective, I don't have any chronic diseases or chronic injuries, I feel pretty comfortable, watching a YouTube video, going online and identifying, kind of what I need to do with the gym. Maybe I take it to the next level and I say, I want a trainer or I want a personal trainer or an exercise physiologist to help me. Great steps. But if I have a chronic disease, if I have a medical diagnosis, that's where I would go to my physical therapist. They have the expertise to take whatever chronic disease or diagnosis that you have and then adapt a safe and effective exercise program for you so you can meet the goals that you want to meet. So
Mhm.
that's kind of the difference between going to a trainer versus asking a physical therapist for support. The physical therapist is going to have that knowledge and that skill set and the education to be able to modify an exercise program for you so you can be, again, safe, and you
Mhm.
can have a progressive program that's going to be beneficial to you.
Great. So if somebody is here listening and they're like, "Oh, wow, I am getting using my arms to get up the stairs. I'm having pain." What would you recommend be their first step in regards to getting access to a physical therapist, finding out who, and being aware that our audience is from all over, the country. And
Yeah.
so, what would be your first step of guidance for somebody in that position?
So the very first step is if you've had any experience with a physical therapist, I would reach back out to that provider and that
Mhm.
practitioner and just kind of give an update. The American Physical Therapy Association does recommend that older adults do get an annual physical therapy evaluation. So that would be something I always encourage, whether you feel like you haven't, there's something going on or not. Even if you're fully healthy and well, absolutely encourage you to go and get that annual physical therapy evaluation. They can do some baseline sort of test and measures or different screens or some performance metrics that are going to be helpful for you. So every single year, you can kind of go back to that physical therapist and kind of see where were you last year versus where were you this year, and then kind of adapt and change based on, maybe your numbers have gotten better. Maybe you put a lot of work into that and then your numbers are even better and you should feel proud about that. Or maybe they've gone the other way and you need to kind of redirect your energy for the upcoming year. So that would be my first choice, is to go to that physical therapist that you have a relationship with. If you don't have a relationship with your physical therapist, I'd ask a friend. That is probably the best way to find a good physical therapist, is someone who's helped, a friend or a family member or a neighbor. That would be my second thing. And if not, if you're going to your physician consistently, the physicians are also supposed to be doing an annual wellness examination. And part of that is to kind of go through some of these performance metrics, ask them if they feel physical therapy would be a benefit for you based on, some of your concerns or some of your questions.
Got it. But it's good to note that you don't need to have your physician recommend a physical therapist. You can go directly to a physical therapist on your own without your physician being a part of it if need be. Of
Yeah.
course, let your
So
physician know, hey, I'm doing physical therapy, but I think that might be a myth, that you can access physical therapy on your own outside of going through your doctor.
Yeah, you can go and have a conversation for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. What the next step is, it kind of depends on the state that you reside in.
Mhm.
Some physical therapists can see patients without a physician referral. Some states you still need a physician
Okay.
referral. And then the second thing is whether or not, if you have a skilled need, and that's, and it's nothing you need to be concerned yourself today,
Weeds. Yeah. Yeah.
but whether insurance would pay for it or insurance wouldn't pay for it. That's another kind of consideration. A lot of physical therapists out there that do a lot of wellness and do a lot of yeah, sort of proactive care that you're mentioning. And what we call them is cash-based service. So you don't need insurance. You would pay them like you'd pay any healthcare provider if you have the resources, and they can work with you on a plan that you want.
Got it. Okay. And that is good to know. So kind of finding out from your state, how the access works, but also for the
Well, let me
audience.
just clarify that. The physical therapist should know that. So if you have a
Okay, so you could
conversation with the
contact a
physical
physical
therapist,
therapist.
they'll then tell you what next steps are. So
Got
you can
it.
always
Okay.
go to the PT, but they
Got it.
might say, in order for me to see you, please go to your physician, bring these concerns to your
Yep.
physician, and then they'll give a referral to me. But you can always have a conversation with the PT.
Perfect. And I also want to highlight the point that you brought up was even if it's not, for whatever reason, not covered by insurance, this is, in my opinion, a service that is worth the out of pocket pay if you're able to for that baseline assessment and for that annual reoccurring assessment essentially, because this kind of falls in line with what we talk about here all the time with openly aging is using your resources to prevent a crisis
Yeah.
and not hoarding all your resources in anticipation of needing all this extra care. By having an annual with physical therapist, you're going to keep yourself more independent, which will save you money in the long run, which is worth the investment up front. So I just want to
Yeah. And
highlight
I
that
always
for the
tell
audience.
people, And I always tell people that, and again, I'm biased, I'm a physical therapist, but the number one thing you can invest your money in is your health.
100%.
So, we look at, I had this conversation with a lot of my patients, and, when you look at what you spend on a daily basis or a weekly basis or a monthly basis, what is going to provide optimal health? And are you investing in those kind of things? Because then that sometimes can prioritize what you feel you can afford. So, having even an annual physical therapy evaluation, even if you don't get any intervention from them, even if you, go to your gym after they prescribe you an exercise program, in my opinion, again, if you have the resources, that is absolutely worth that investment to go to that expert.
100%. I agree. That's why you're here talking today, because this is one of my biggest points after, seeing senior living and watching all these people come into senior living. And one of the biggest reasons they ended up in assisted living was mobility, and if they
Mhm.
had protected their mobility, they may have been able to stay home longer or move into independent living, which has more free, isn't as expensive. Um, so wonderful. So, what are some of the things you see from a mindset? Like some of the barriers people don't understand about physical therapy? I don't know if I'm asking this correctly, but basically, how do you want people to see physical therapy that maybe in our current society you don't see it that way? An example that I'm thinking of is right now a lot of people think it's, oh, we have a fall, we were in the hospital, now we need physical therapy. So how, if you had a wand, how would you want people's mindset to shift in regards to physical therapy and the use of it and um the benefits of it?
Yeah, so I would have them look at their PT in the whole continuum of care.
Hmm.
So, from a wellness perspective to acute injury to a chronic injury, back to getting to that preventative and that wellness component, is that the PT has a role in all aspects of that continuum. Most people, like you mentioned, do think of a physical therapist after some sort of injury,
Hmm.
after a hip fracture or a knee replacement or, a rotator cuff repair. But they don't see a physical physical therapist as that wellness person. They see the personal trainer at the gym who is great. The trainers that are out there, the exercise physiologists are out there, are amazing. They have their place. They're good for most people. What I'm promoting is people that have chronic diseases, or they have a medical diagnosis, or they're getting older. They're at risk for a decline, or risk for falls, or their risk for declining strength. Strength training, is another thing that I think there's a lot of resources now out there in the, out there online or in the media about the importance of it. But there's not a lot of people out there. And that is probably the number one, outside of being mobile.
Hmm.
Utilizing strength training as an older adult is vital for your longevity. The quality of the years that we're here, a lot of it is dependent on how strong you are.
Absolutely. And would you say that, using physical therapy, if it's just annually or if you need it for longer periods in accordance or in tandem with, maybe a personal trainer or, being active at the
Yes,
gym is like kind of the ideal situation in my world is you have a physical therapist that,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yep,
and then they kind of help
absolutely.
guide, and then you can be working at the gym with your personal trainer, and then go in for your checkups with your physical therapy just to make sure everything's in line. That to me would be
Yeah,
like
and
the
that's
perfect.
absolutely what is ideal,
Yeah.
especially in the independent community, in the what we call community dwelling older adults. So people that are out there living at home or independent, is having the physical therapist perform the initial evaluation, have them
Hmm.
do the performance metrics, have them do some of those baseline assessments, prescribe that initial strength assessment, or I mean that strength program for them, make sure it's the right one, because you don't want to do a one and done kind of thing. You want to have the patient perform it and then have the patient come back and say, this is working for me, this isn't working for me, this is
Hmm.
something that I will do, this is something I absolutely won't do.
Hmm.
Or I have some shoulder pain doing that particular exercise that you didn't see on day one. So making those modifications, getting to a good place, and then absolutely kind of handing off that program to that personal trainer, to that exercise physiologist. It's great to have communication back and forth if that's possible. And then if there's an injury, something down the line, then they will come back to the PT and we start the whole process
Hmm.
again.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm not advocating in a lot of cases where the PT is the only provider of care. I
Yeah.
think they're really good at the very beginning of care. And based on a lot of people's presentations, you can absolutely have a personal trainer and exercise phys deliver that prescribed program.
Awesome. Now, in protection of people as we're getting older, now obviously a physical therapist, they have very specific credentials. Is there anything our audience should just be mindful of when they are looking for that physical therapist in their area? I always tell people, Facebook groups are amazing to get recommendations from. So, like you said earlier, talking to friends, people in your church, on a Facebook group, people who have used a physical therapist. But is there any advice you would give to make sure that the best quality of physical therapy, our audience knows how to find that? Is there anything they should be wary of in regards to that?
Yeah, it's a great question, because not all physical therapists are created equal, and that's not a
Hmm.
positive or negative thing. It's just when we get out of school, we all provided general training.
Hmm.
And then what we do after that is the kind of the specialty area that we're kind of driving our passion towards. So not only are you looking for a physical therapist, you want to look for a physical therapist that has an expertise in what you are and what you need. So, as an example, I'm a certified exercise expert for older adults. So that would be, I see a lot of people that have fall risk and need fall assessment, need strength assessments. So kind of what we've been talking about today. But if I saw a patient that had significant balance where it's like inner ear vestibular kind of stuff, I would absolutely make a referral.
Hmm.
My daughter who does cross country and it maybe has a running injury, I'm going to send her to a physical therapist that does more orthopedic, that sees athletes, that sees runners.
Hmm.
That's where I'm sending my daughter. Not She's not coming to me for those kind of those kind
Got
of
it.
injuries. So there are some specialty areas out there. That's why you kind of look at physical therapist websites. You look at their bio. you kind of see where some of their training is. A lot of PTs have a lot of manual training. So if you're looking for a manual therapist, people that do myofascial release and some of these amazing manual techniques. Also, a big thing in physical therapy now is dry needling. If they've heard the dry needling term, you have to have special training to do dry needling. So you would seek a PT that's had some experience with that. So yes, you do want to ask the second question of, yes, I found a PT, but what area do they typically practice in and what's their expertise?
Got it. Um, Now, from what I'm taking from this conversation is the highlights are having a relationship with a physical therapist is very beneficial as we get older. Even if it's just for the annual check-ins, for making sure we have a baseline and how we're doing throughout the year. Having a physical therapist relationship in congruently with having a relationship with maybe a physical trainer, or having, a gym, or doing physical activity based on the recommendations from the physical therapist. But also that you don't have to go to the doctor to get your physical therapist. You can find it through Facebook groups, you can find it through recommendations, and just having that relationship. But also finding a physical therapist that specializes in maybe aging bodies, older adults
Mhm.
who that is kind of their specialty, is also important. Um, so, as we kind of wrap up this conversation, and I so appreciate your time today, what do you want to leave the audience with? We started with what you hope they get out of it, which I think we accomplished, but what would be some final words that you want to make sure that, as that our audience leaves with?
Yeah, so I would just have everyone kind of think about what we talked about, and even thinking about how we're getting around in our daily life. Are you pushing up from a chair?
Mm-hmm.
Has your walking speed got a little bit less? Are you hunching over a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
than you have before? Do you feel a little bit weaker? Has your fitness routine got a little bit less than what you like? Are you not going out and doing things that are as meaningful and bring value and joy in your life? And if the answers are yes to any of that, ask why,
Mm-hmm.
and be able to see if it's a mobility issue, if it's a range of motion issue, if it's a pain issue. Reach out and look for that physical therapist and just have a conversation. At minimal, you engage with somebody, you meet somebody, and you can learn who to talk to in the future if you feel like today is not the day. The biggest part with PT, especially as people try to do some of these things at home, is behavior change. So you have to want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
PTs, like physicians, we can't kind of change how you go about your day unless you want to make that change. So that's the other thing to kind of self-reflect. Are you ready? Are you halfway
Mm-hmm.
ready? Would a conversation, getting more information be beneficial? But today is the day to kind of make those changes and make those improvements, because with two aging parents, you want to make sure that they're as mobile and they're doing as many things that bring a value as possible.
Mm-hmm. And as the aging person who's, watching this, interview, is how do you want to age? This is all part of it, and if you want to have freedom and independence and keep your control, then you've got to be aware of those little changes and not just accept them as normal aging, but say, hey, let me ask a professional if they can help me make this situation better for me. So I love that we ended on that, because that is the whole point, is don't accept these aging issues as normal and there's nothing you can do about them. Look at them, say, wow, that's inhibiting me from actually living the life I want to live. So, what can I do to make this better? And how can I change this? And if I need to start with my mindset, then I need to start with my mindset and then start working with the professional who can, actually put that mindset to work and to action, and
Absolutely.
give me what I need. So awesome. Well, thank you so much. I truly appreciate you coming on. And for the audience, thank you again for being part of the Openly Aging community. And we will have a Q&A session later this month to go over if there's any want to talk a little further about mobility and how best to stay proactive, how to help our mindset stay positive, and making sure that we're looking at the small things, and maybe offer, support to each other on maybe you've had experience with a physical therapist and how it went, and to help people, encourage people to maybe look within their community to start forming that relationship. So until next time, I'll talk to you soon. All right, bye bye.